Warnings. A warning is the most basic type of action that the race stewards can award a driver for pushing the boundaries, nay, breaking some sporting regulations. The most common type of warning involves the exceeding of track limits, wherein 4 tyres of the car cross the white line. If a driver repeats the offence 3 more times after the first warning, he'll more often than not be slapped with a corresponding penalty. An upgraded warning is called a reprimand. A reprimand is incurred on a per-season basis. If a driver is handed his 5th reprimand in a season, he'll automatically be handed a grid penalty. More on that later. Time penalties. The most commonly used penalty that's reached the point of being used as a meme, time penalties are handed on 5 and 10-second varieties. A 5-second penalty is given to a driver for minor fouls and mistakes, wherein the driver is at fault, but the incident caused wasn't highly dangerous and did not bring any advantage. On the other hand, a 10-second penalty is given for dangerous acts that can endanger the well-being of the racers. One of the more recent examples of this is during the 2025 Spanish Grand Prix when Max Verstappen smacked into George Russell at turn 5, even though many fans argue that the penalty was still too light. A crucial part of the time penalty rule is how it's served. Drivers are expected to serve it within their next pit stop, and upon reaching their pit box, sit idly for either 5 or 10 seconds, with the mechanics just watching on, pretty much like how a hockey player gets placed on the penalty box before getting the car serviced. If one person accidentally starts working on the car during the time frame, a further 10-second penalty will be issued. However, if a driver receives this kind of penalty but has already made all his pit stops, the penalty will be added to their finishing time at the race's conclusion. This also works with post-race penalties. Fines. A huge topic of contention since the election of Mohammed Ben Sulayem as FIA president, monetary fines are now a recurring theme in the sport. A fine can not only be given due to an on-track incident like Lando Norris and George Russell at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix last year, but also due to foul language like Charles Leclerc's slip-up at the 2024 Mexico City Grand Prix. Now, one of the funniest stories ever is Max Verstappen receiving a €50,000 fine after touching Lewis Hamilton's rear wing in 2021. Drive-through penalties. Drive-through penalties bear some similarities to time penalties to the point that they should be served in the pits, requiring a driver to observe proper speed before exiting the pit lane. However, the major difference between the two infractions is that drive-through penalties have to be served within 3 laps of its issuance. The only exception to this is if a safety car or virtual safety car has been deployed, then the driver is not allowed to serve the penalty and should serve it afterwards. Drive-through penalties were the go-to punishment for a long time, before time penalties took over in recent years. Another variation of the drive-through penalty is the stop-and-go penalty, which is worth a grand total of 10 seconds. Given that the time spent at the pit box lasts 3 seconds in a normal pit stop, serving 10 seconds with the crew just watching and unable to work on the car before being released to rejoin the race is the stuff of nightmares for any team, and the total time lost is up to 30 seconds. Grid penalties. Unlike the previous violations that are mostly given during a race, a grid penalty is handed out for infringements done from a previous race week or a present race week that would require a driver to drop grid positions. The more common types of grid penalties are the 5-place and 10-place grid penalties. Such penalties are given when drivers exceed the allowed allocation for power unit and gearbox parts. Recalling back from the previous section about reprimands, a driver may only incur 4 reprimands a year, as the 5th will automatically result in a 10-place grid penalty. Although a reprimand is more often race-related, an example of the non-race variety occurred in 2021 when Sebastian Vettel was struck down with one after wearing a Same Love shirt that promotes LGBT inclusivity. Grid penalties for causing crashes or overtaking under yellow flags often result in 3 or 5-place grid penalties, but stewards can also hand out 1-place penalties. Disqualification. One of the more extreme types of penalties that can be awarded to a team or driver is a disqualification. Although disqualifications are rare, some of the best drivers have been struck down with such punishments, like George Russell in Belgium 2024 after his car registered as underweight after a race, and Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in Austin 2023 after the installed skid blocks in their cars were deemed excessively worn. Usually caused by technical infringement, the last DSQ we witnessed during a race was at the 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix, where marshals illegally pushed Nico Hülkenberg back on track. Penalty points. Penalty points are demerits given to a driver's super license for infractions made during race weeks, such as rejoining the track unsafely and ignoring blue flags. A driver can only incur up to 12 penalty points in a calendar year before being struck down with a one-race ban. In 2024, Kevin Magnussen was banned from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix after doing such a feat. As a result, Ollie Behrman stood in for the sole race in Baku. Race ban. The most extreme form of penalty given to a driver, a race ban commonly results from rowdy and dangerous behaviour on track that capture the attention of the racing stewards that would ultimately warrant a temporary suspension of a team or driver for unsafe practices. F1 legend Michael Schumacher has been known to push the boundaries during his racing days. In 1994, he was banned from the Italian and Portuguese Grand Prix after multiple infractions during the British GP of that season. Another F1 legend who was given a ban was Riccardo Patrese during the 1978 Italian GP at Monza. This was due to the threat of a boycott by contingent of drivers including James Hunt, Niki Lauda, Mario Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi after Patrese's aggressive driving caused a 9-car collision in the previous race in Zandvoort. Patrese's Arrows team ultimately withdrew from the race. The last driver ever to receive a race ban, not through the penalty point system, but just by causing too many crashes, was Romain Grosjean. In 2012, he got banned after causing a horrendous crash at the start of the Belgian Grand Prix. How could the season have ended without this DNF for Romain Grosjean? Who knows? And talking about chaos, in our last video we covered every type of flag used in Formula 1. Watch this video next, since there are a lot of unknown use cases for many flags. See you over there.